5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
On July 16, 1969, at 9:32 a.m. local time, the Saturn V launched Apollo 11 from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. On board were Collins, Aldrin, and Armstrong. Mission objective: to perform the first human landing on the moon. 2 minutes into the flight, the first stage separated. Then, after another 6 minutes, the second stage detached. And eventually, after 12 minutes of the flight, Apollo 11 successfully entered orbit. At this point, everyone relaxed a bit, because the launch, it's always one of the most dangerous parts of a rocket flight. That being said, the mission had only started, and there were still many challenges ahead. 3 hours later, after 1.5 orbits around Earth, the third stage engines fired up again and pushed Apollo 11 toward the moon. It was called translunar injection. That sounds so cool for some reason. 30 minutes later, they performed the final, for now, maneuver, which was called transportation, docking, and extraction. The command and service module, separated from the third stage, turned around and docked with the lunar module. After that, the CSM extracted the lunar module, and this combined spacecraft flew toward the moon. Apollo 11 had finally reached its final configuration, allowing everyone to exhale and calm down, at least for now. Now, Collins, Aldrin, and Armstrong had a 3-day journey ahead of them to the moon. Man, imagine what was going on through their minds. Like, on the one hand, it was terrifying. They were literally leaving their planet. But on the other hand, they were about to become the first humans in history to set foot on the moon. And that was definitely exciting. But then you start thinking about all these what-if scenarios. What if the spacecraft crashes? Or what if it can't lift off from the moon? Imagine what it would be like to be stuck there. Like, you're standing on the surface of the moon, looking up into the sky, and you see this beautiful blue sphere, your planet, your home, and you realize you're never going back there. You're stuck on the moon forever, or at least until your food and oxygen supplies run out. It's so scary. Oh, anyway, we've arrived. As Apollo 11 approached the moon, it fired up its engine and entered lunar orbit. The moon appeared so close from the windows that it looked like you could touch it, which Armstrong and Aldrin were going to do in a few hours. And so, when the time came, Armstrong and Aldrin moved into the lunar module, separated from the rest of the spacecraft, and began their descent to the surface of the moon. At first, everything went smoothly. The lunar module was not damaged, and the landing gear deployed properly. Armstrong even said, "The Eagle has wings." That was the name of the lunar module, the Eagle. But then, there was a problem. The astronauts noticed that they were passing the landmarks 2 or 3 seconds early. In other words, the lunar module was traveling too fast. This meant they wouldn't be able to land where they had originally intended to do so. Not long after, another problem arose. The computer began showing errors. Of course, everyone was worried, but luckily, the Mission Control Center was able to quickly confirm that all systems were normal and that they could continue their descent. As it turned out later, it was just a hardware design bug. But soon, there was another problem. Well, what did you think? It's a moon landing. It's not that easy. So Armstrong, looking out the window, noticed that the computer was going to land the Eagle in an area where there were a lot of large rocks. So he had to take control. Eventually, he found a safe place to land and began maneuvering the lunar module there. At the bottom of the landing gear, of the footpads, there were these 170 cm probes. The thing is that the engineers were afraid that the pressure created by the engine exhaust gases reflecting off the lunar surface might cause an explosion. So they put these probes on footpads that will immediately activate a warning upon a contact with the surface. It was just a light on the instrument panel, and as soon as these probes touched down, Armstrong had to shut down the engine immediately. Unfortunately, he forgot to do this and only turned off the engine after the spaceship itself had landed. Luckily, everything was alright. And so, 4 days into the mission, they finally landed on the moon. It has been just 7 years since Kennedy's historic "we choose to go to the moon" speech. And now, just 7 years later, the astronauts were finally on the moon. Isn't that crazy? After they had done all their stuff on the moon and returned to the spacecraft, it was time for them to fly back. The lunar module actually had two stages. The first stage was for landing, and the second stage was for takeoff. And so, during takeoff, the first stage acted as a launch pad for the second stage. So, they fired up the engine and ascended back into orbit. There, they docked with the command and service module, moved there, detached the lunar module, and flew back to Earth, where everyone, absolutely everyone, considered them heroes, because they were the first humans in history to land and walk on the moon.